Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. All eyes on Wisconsin this weekend, where Donald Trump's two remaining rivals are hoping to throw up a roadblock on his path to the Republican nomination. A new Fox Business poll is the second this week to show Texas Senator Ted Cruz with a 10-point lead in the Badger State. So would a loss there be enough to stall Trump's momentum? And could it deny him the 1,237 delegates he needs going into the GOP convention in July? Let's ask Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger and columnist Kim Strassel and Jason Riley. So, Kim, what is going on in Wisconsin? Why is that proving to be such a stumbling block for Donald Trump?
Donald Trump's got a lot of problems there. One is that he's up against a Republican electorate in Wisconsin that has been through a lot of battles over the last few years over Scott Walker's big government reform, Senate recalls, gubernatorial recalls. So these people are very savvy. They're very energetic. They're informed. They're very into conservative principles, and they're not quite sure that they are taking to Donald Trump.
Well, is it because they're not sure Donald Trump is a conservative? Because the conservative talk show hosts there, in contrast to some of the national radio talk show hosts who have been in Trump's camp, in Wisconsin, these are real conservatives who are saying, look, we're not sure Trump is one of us.
That's right, and they are very influential in that state. It's another aspect of Wisconsin. There's 3 or 4 of these radio talk show hosts. A lot of conservatives get most of their news from them, and most of them have been in the Never Trump movement from the start. So there's just a lot of bent-up hostility for Donald Trump in that state.
Not a good week, Jason, for Donald Trump, generally, nationally. I mean, I think that also may be part of playing this. You had his abortion misstep where he said that initially, in a response to Chris Matthews, that the woman should be punished if abortion were legal. Then he took that back. That was not just liberals who criticized, but people on the right, the anti-abortion movement.
And it fits a pattern, the comments about women in the past, now this. People don't like to see that. It's not just that issue, though. He's done these town halls where he showed he's out of his depth talking about issues like NATO, nuclear proliferation, and so forth. Donald Trump doesn't seem to have a decent grasp of the issues, let alone the type of grasp of the issues that a conservative electorate would like their candidate to have.
Yeah, there's a question about performance level, Dan. I mean, coming out of Super Tuesday, it looked like he was in a position to consolidate his support and grow it. He gave the speech at APEC in Washington where he spoke from a text. He focused on the substance of the issue. And yet that's kind of dwindled away here with these off-the-cuff remarks that raise doubts about whether he could sustain a campaign against Hillary Clinton. I don't care how much you support Donald Trump. There has to be a doubt about performance.
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on here in Wisconsin. First, it's the first post-Marco Rubio primary in which you've only got the 3 people running. And the question was always, where are Rubio's voters going to go? The polls suggest that they're being redistributed between Cruz and Kasich, with Donald Trump again sitting there at his usual 30–35%. The second issue is we are 9 months into, it's been 9 months since Donald Trump joined the campaign. We have 7 months to go. Now that we're down to 3 people, it was inevitable that the campaign was going to start focusing on other issues like nuclear weapons, which he stumbled on this past Tuesday in the town hall at CNN.
Well, but he would say, look, I didn't stumble. I said Japan and South Korea and Saudi Arabia should probably get developed nuclear weapons. Why should we protect them, continue to protect them?
But to your earlier point, he has gotten this far mainly by talking about building a wall down on the Mexican border and by doing something about trade with China. These 2 issues he's been able to repeat over and over again in the context of a larger campaign with more people. He's not going to be able to go forward with just 2 issues anymore. And once he's pressed on some of these things on which he seems not to have educated himself, he's going to keep running into problems like we saw this week.
And the abortion comments were particularly telling, Paul. That is obviously a huge issue in U.S. politics to anyone who's been paying attention over the past 30 years. For him to make that big of a mistake, I think, was extremely, extremely telling.
But you don't question his anti-abortion bona fides, because I don't.
Yes, I do.
Well, you see, I think he's actually sincere, but I would credit him with sincerity in that. I just think he hadn't absorbed the argument deeply enough to understand the sort of the second and third stage.
I think you're giving Donald Trump a little bit too much credit. I think this is a man who has spent his professional professional career, putting his finger to the political wind and then pulling out his checkbook to advance himself financially.
All right, let's talk about Ted Cruz, Kim. You've got the Republican establishment in Wisconsin wrapping their arms around him, but not necessarily because they love Cruz, but because they want to stop Trump.
Yeah, they've taken the pulse here. They realize that he's got a better chance of beating Trump than does John Kasich, or at least that's the betting. So I would argue that a lot of those endorsements that you see coming, like Scott Walker's of him, are coming not necessarily because they adore Ted Cruz, but because they really want Donald Trump to be halted before the convention.
Yeah, and John Kasich, it's fascinating, Dan. John Kasich is being attacked. Ted Cruz is not focusing on Trump so much. He's attacking John Kasich, who's third in the polls in Wisconsin and who he says has no support. So why is his super PAC hitting Kasich?
Well, he's hitting Kasich because I think he's worried that Kasich could challenge him in some of the other mid-Atlantic states, especially Pennsylvania, the next one up, or places like New York and Connecticut and Maryland. He would just as soon have John Kasich out of the race because everyone now knows this is going to Cleveland where the delegates are going to have to decide. He doesn't want Kasich there spoiling
I agree.
it for him.
He doesn't want Kasich to be in that convention because if they don't pick Trump, they don't pick Cruz, maybe they turn to John Kasich.